Yo, back game. Anyway, I'm gonna watch why Kakashi getting stronger for losing the Sharingan makes no sense. I mean, eh, I want his
Kakashi
Sharingan, but hey, we finna see, bro. I
with
ain't gonna have
no
great nerve for real, but I watch Super
Sharingan is
Naruto.
stronger than Kakashi with a Sharingan, or at least that's what they tell us. The Kakashi Shinden novel really tries to convey this to us. Oh, Kakashi is now so much stronger than what he used to be. Not necessarily DMS Kakashi, because there was an exceptional buff that lasted for 5 minutes in universe. It was not something that was going to happen again, and it was clearly way above anything Kakashi is ever capable of doing as Hokage. But even claiming that Hokage Kakashi without the Sharingan is stronger than the Warark version of Kakashi with the Mangekyo spamming Kamui several times, and just being a very strong shinobi is a major stretch, and it doesn't make sense. And yes, I am aware that we do not see Hokage Kakashi in action in the manga, or even in the anime, to be honest, so the only source we have for Kakashi's powers is going to be the Kakashi Shinden novels. And we know that every single Naruto novel is essentially a power fantasy for the titular character. They're going to be very much glazed within the story, that's how it goes, we know, and because Kakashi is the main character of his novel, he obviously is going to have to be extremely OP and naturally stronger than any previous Kakashi version except for the DMS version, because that would be way too crazy. And yes, doing so makes Hokage Kakashi feel more impactful, because if he is a Hokage that was nerfed, it kinda feels a bit contrived. Well, how did he become Hokage in the first place when you have Naruto and Sasuke who are obviously more powerful than him? He needs to be at least a bit strong here, and well, to that I say Kakashi should not have been Hokage to begin with. I made a whole video talking about that, but the concept of Kakashi becoming stronger because he loses the Sharingan is absurd, and it just doesn't make any sense. So let's talk about this. First, let's discuss the abilities Kakashi gains once he becomes Hokage and once he loses the Sharingan, specifically what he does in his Shinden novel. The most famous of those abilities is going to be the Purple Lightning, or Shiden. It's a jutsu that replaces the Raikiri/Chidori. Instead of looking blue and like a lightning discharge, it looks purple, and also sort of like a lightning discharge. But the jutsu is said to be more versatile than the regular Raikiri, allowing him to use mid-range lightning
Bro,
projectiles and run
this man over here saying these extra fancy words, bro. Just say Chidori gang. Like, it's not that deep, bro. It's not.
his
Man.
Chalk-Raven through water, which Kakashi could
This
already
nigga
do with
over
his
anime
regular
nerd.
Raikiri. He could run
He's
Chakra
saying
through
a
water
proper
if he
name,
needed
bro.
to
Just
with
say
the
what everybody
lightning
know.
style,
Cuz.
and he also had Lightning Hound, which was a long-distance/mid-range lightning jutsu that was a variant of the Raikiri. But the main benefits of Shiden, or Purple Lightning, was that Kakashi didn't have to move forward in this immense speed in order to create the lightning discharge that was Raikiri/Chidori. That was the weakness of that jutsu. You had to move so fast that you didn't see the opponent's counterattack. That's why you needed a Sharingan to use it properly, and when we saw Kakashi using it for the first time in the Third Great Ninja War against the Stone Ninja, he got counterattacked, and if it wasn't by Minato, he probably would have been hurt very badly. The Stone Ninja managed to slash him and draw blood. Rin had to heal him and everything, so yeah, man, if you lose a Sharingan, you're gonna have to stop using this jutsu because it's too dangerous. So Kakashi comes up with a similar jutsu that he can use in a pretty similar way, creating this blade of lightning in his hand, but that doesn't involve him having to move too fast and exposing himself to counterattacks. But the thing is, the fact that you had to move really fast to create the Chidori in the first place was sort of ignored after a while in the Naruto series. I mean, it never really was a thing if you think about it, because every single character, ever since the very beginning of part 1 when they used Chidori or
Nigga used to
Raikiri,
boot it up
weren't
by standing
moving
still.
when they first
Facts.
activate the jutsu. So this is sort of a weird thing that they come up with. Oh, you have to move really fast to make Raikiri or Chidori work, and that's why you get
Let's see,
exposed. But the
keep
first time we
saying
see
that,
the
bro. It's
jutsu, when
low-key irritating
Kakashi
me,
used it
bro.
against Zabuza in the bridge, he
Raikiri
was
gang,
standing
just say
still when he
Chidori,
first
bro.
created the lightning blade, so he didn't have to move. The same thing goes for Sasuke against Gaara the first time he used the jutsu. He creates the Chidori as he's standing on that wall, and he's not moving. Sure, he moves really fast after that, but it's more like the speed enhances the power of the jutsu. It's not that you cannot create the jutsu itself if you're not moving fast. And then in Naruto Shippuden, there's so many instances of that happening. There's that scene when Obito comes to talk to Naruto during the 5 Summit arc, that Yamato reps Obito and that wood-style jutsu of his, and Kakashi uses a Raikiri to intimidate Obito as they're trying to interrogate the guy, and he keeps the Raikiri activated right next to Obito for several minutes, and Kakashi was not moving at all. But oh no, I have to create Shinden here because I don't have the Sharingan anymore. Dude, it's just a Raikiri that looks purple. That's it. Is it more powerful than the Chidori chakra-wise and power-wise? I wouldn't say that. It's the same jutsu. But then in the light novel, Kakashi also uses some other powerful jutsus that have a much larger scale than what we are expecting from Kakashi, especially because he doesn't have a whole lot of chakra. He manages to control the weather, creating a massive lightning storm, which is a large jutsu, kind of like Kirin almost. He also has a massive fire release spear. He also uses a jutsu called fire release water mist that allows him to control moisture in the air with fire style. He also has some very large scale water style jutsus, flooding entire villages and the like. And to be fair, the first time Kakashi ever fights in the Naruto series against Zabuza, he already was using some very large scale water style jutsus like the water vortex and the water dragon, but still, those are more massive. And because he's using those jutsus, people are scratching their heads and asking, well, Kakashi, who was a guy famously known for not having that much chakra, even though it's not as if Kakashi was chakraless, is using now some jutsus that shouldn't be possible for him. However, that's when people come in and say, well, that's because he lost a Sharingan. He doesn't have to use insane amounts of chakra to keep the Sharingan activated, and therefore he can use more large-scale jutsus. After all, Kakashi is not a true Uchiha. The Sharingan is not acquainted to his body, even though he managed to master the eye very well, even using the Mangekyo. He is still going to be drained much more than a real Uchiha. And now that he doesn't have the eye anymore, he's not going to have to pay that chakra tax, essentially. Kakashi also mentions to Sasuke when he's teaching him the Chidori that when you use another jutsu with a Sharingan activated, the amount of chakra you burn increases exponentially. That's why Sasuke could only use 2 Chidoris in Naruto Part 1, and Kakashi could only use 4 Raikiris, because they had to use it with a Sharingan activated, and that's going to spend a whole lot of chakra. But now that Kakashi doesn't have the Sharingan anymore, that's not going to be a problem, and he's going to have more chakra to spare. But this doesn't make sense, because for most of the time, Kakashi was not using the Sharingan. He covered it with his headband. He only pulled the headband up when he had to use a Sharingan when the fight was getting a little bit difficult. So Kakashi had the option of not using the Sharingan, of not burning that extra amount of chakra if he needed to, putting himself in the exact same state as he is as Hokage without a Sharingan. But then the argument becomes a bit strange, and this is also supported by the light novels, which is that even though Kakashi pulled his headband down, the Sharingan still consumed his chakra and made him a much less efficient shinobi. Not at the same rate as he did when Kakashi was using the eye when he pulled the headband up, but still in a constant rate that essentially nerfed his chakra reserves forever. But that simply doesn't make any sense. First, we never get any indication from Kakashi that that was happening when the Sharingan was not activated. We know he couldn't handle a Sharingan for a long time. In Naruto Part 1, he passes out after his first fight against Zabuza, and we also know he couldn't handle the Mangekyo very well, especially in the beginning of Naruto Shippuden, but still, when he's not using the eye, it seems like he's just a regular shinobi. And if this was the case, then why wouldn't Kakashi just not use the Sharingan, just take it out of his eye sockets and be a regular ninja? A ninja that's not nerfed by this alien eye instead of his head? Sure, you could come up with a few excuses. One, Kakashi had just developed the Chidori. He wanted that jutsu to be his main weapon in his arsenal, and the Sharingan completed that jutsu. Two, there's an emotional connection because that was Obito's final gift, so even if it was nerfing him, Kakashi wouldn't want to take it away. But he didn't have to destroy the Sharingan after he removed it. He could put it in a vial. Obito had a stash of 160 Sharingan at least in his hideout, so that's not a problem. And if he becomes that much stronger without the Sharingan, then the benefit it gives to Kakashi's Raikiri isn't worth it, right? So he was essentially nerfing himself purposefully for almost 20 years when he could be a much stronger shinobi, learning other techniques and not passing out when he uses the Sharingan. Because that's
I'm gonna go wash my hands, bro. Go ahead, lick it. Yeah, yeah.
Think
Anyway,
right, if the Sharingan was actively making him weaker, it doesn't make any sense for him to use it. If it's actively nerfing his chakra reserves, even when the Sharingan is not being used, there's no reason for him to use it. Yeah, it makes the Chidori better. Yeah, it gives you a better reaction time. You can cast Ocular Genjutsu with it. You can resist Genjutsu well with it. But if the other capabilities that you have as a shinobi diminish so much, then it doesn't make sense. The trade-off is not a good one. Especially because Kakashi is already really good at pretty much everything that the Sharingan enhances. And he is not that good when it comes to chakra reserves and stamina, and that's where the Sharingan is taken away. So the Sharingan is surely enhancing a few of his strengths, but it's badly affecting his glaring weakness. That doesn't make any sense. Some would say Kakashi would be min-maxing, but that's not how min-maxing works. If you would actually be stronger without the thing you're using to quote-unquote min-max. The only other feasible explanation as to why Kakashi would keep the Sharingan is that he just didn't know it was nerfing his chakra reserves. And that just doesn't make sense, because Kakashi surely would feel a difference when he got the Sharingan to what he used to feel before. He was already a Jonin when he got the Sharingan, so it's not as if he didn't know himself and his chakra and how his body operated. He would realize there's a difference in the amount of chakra he can output after he got the Sharingan, and he would understand, oh, okay, that's probably not that advantageous actually. And this effect of diminishing chakra reserves does not happen with anybody else that has a stolen eye in the Naruto series. As a matter of fact, it seems that it works the opposite way. Danzo, for example, not only has Shisui's Mangekyo Sharingan with access to Koto Matsukami, but he has 10 other Sharingan in his arm to cast Izanagi with. Now, sure, you could say maybe it's because he has a lot of Hashirama cells and that's how he can counteract the side effects of the Sharingan in a non-Uchiha body, but Danzo's not the only one. Nagato got a pair of Rinnegan, and are you gonna tell me that the Rinnegan made him weaker? Because he based his entire fighting style around the powers of those eyes of Madara's Rinnegan. And sure, Nagato is an Uzumaki with an abnormally large chakra reserve and a lot of stamina as well, that's what they're known for. And then you may say, well, you don't know how powerful Nagato could have been. Maybe he could be like Naruto, he's an Uzumaki too. I don't know, somehow I doubt that. And when Obito gets Madara's Rinnegan, his chakra reserves don't decrease. They actually increase substantially. If you take a look at Obito in the Wark with the Rinnegan, he's doing so many different things. He's controlling the six-path Jinchuriki and Tail Beasts. He's fighting against Naruto, B, Kakashi, and Guy.
wait,
He's using and doing
is it Sukuyomi or Sukunomi? Tsukinomi. What? Gang, I've been saying Tsukuyomi. Why they make it, bruh? Hold on, y'all probably can't even see the jaw game, but Tsukunomi. Maybe I'm just sped, bro, but like, I did not know that.
so many different things. He's controlling the six-path Jinchuriki and Tail Beasts. He's fighting against Naruto, B, Kakashi, and Guy. He's using Madara's fan. He's using all sorts of jutsus and spamming Kamui as well. And just fighting for a very long time without sparing any chakra. That's not something Obito used to do before he got the Rinnegan. So yeah, obviously that Rinnegan made him much stronger. He himself says it. And then you may say, well, but he didn't use two Rinnegan. And that's how we know he would be weaker with two Rinnegan. And sure, Obito tells Sakura that he tried to get the second Rinnegan and didn't do it. But not because he would be weaker. It's because the power of the eyes would overwhelm him. He couldn't withstand it. He wasn't strong enough to sustain the eyes. Now, yeah, I guess you could say he would be weaker that way because the eyes would kill him. And then you can even say, yeah, that's because the Rinnegan is draining Obito's chakra when he's using it constantly, just like Kakashi's Sharingan. But I don't think that's how the Rinnegan would kill Obito if he implanted both of them. The Rinnegan's power and chakra would simply overwhelm Obito's body and he would essentially die from it. Not because the Rinnegan was draining his chakra constantly. And you can even say, well, Obito doesn't count because he literally is an Uchiha and he has Hashirama cells so he can withstand those eyes. But the Rinnegan is clearly different than the Sharingan. It's much stronger, so I suppose it sort of balances out, right? Also, are you really telling me that those new jutsus that Kakashi has learned, those elemental transformation jutsus are gonna be more powerful than his Kamui, which is probably the most broken jutsu in the series. Kamui was able to counter truth-seeking orbs. Remember when he Kamui'd Madara's truth-seeking orb shield in the Guy fight? So the loss of the Sharingan itself could not have made Kakashi stronger. That doesn't make sense. However, there is a way in which you can justify Kakashi becoming stronger than he used to be when he becomes Hokage, even without the Sharingan, and that has essentially two reasons. First of all, we know Kakashi is a prodigy and a genius. He was the youngest ninja to ever graduate the academy at 5 years old. He was the youngest Chunin in the history of the Leaf Village at 6 years old, and he was the youngest Jonin in the history of the Leaf Village at 13 years old. Now, the 5 and 6-year-old numbers are disputed with the data books and the manga because when we see Obito's flashback in the manga, he graduates at the same time as Kakashi, and he becomes a Chunin pretty much a year after Kakashi, not long before they go to the Kanabi Bridge mission. So Kishimoto probably just retconned the fact that Kakashi graduated the academy at 5, because let's be real here, nobody cares about what's written in a data book. If Kishimoto wants to contradict that for story reasons, he's completely allowed to do that, and I don't care. But when it comes to Kakashi being a 13-year-old Jonin and the youngest ever, that's in the manga, that happened. And Kakashi has always been regarded as a prodigy and a genius, even in Naruto Part 1. Remember when Orochimaru talked to Kakashi, he acknowledged Kakashi as being very talented. And we also know Kakashi remained Hokage for actually a decent amount of time. Surprisingly, a lot of time in universe. Of course, in the manga, he's Hokage for half a chapter, but in universe, he becomes Hokage about 6 months to a year after the end of the 4th Great Ninja War, when Naruto is still 17, maybe 18 years old, depending on how much. And Naruto becomes Hokage at 33 years old, which means Kakashi was the 6th Hokage for about 15 years. To put this into perspective, this makes Kakashi the 2nd longest reigning Hokage in the history of the village, only after Hiruzen. Tsunade ruled for about 4 years, Minato ruled for about a year, Tobirama also ruled for about a year because he died in the 1st Great Ninja War, and Hashirama also died in the 1st Great Ninja War, so Tobirama didn't even make out of this first war. And we don't know how long Hashirama ruled for exactly, but he looked pretty young in his Edo Tensei version, and we know that the Edo Tensei brings the character back in the appearance at which he died. So certainly less than 15 years, and Hiruzen died at about 69 years old. We don't know how old he was when he became Hokage, but he looked very young in that Danzo flashback with Tobirama. I would say at most 23 or so. He's even younger than he looks when he's the sensei of the 3 Sanin, which means Hiruzen ruled the Leaf Village for over 40 years, with just 1 year of interval when Minato was the Hokage. And Kakashi's the 2nd with about 15 years. And in those 15 years, especially because now the world is much more peaceful, there aren't a lot of threats for Kakashi to take care of, he can just focus on training and learning new skills. Something Kakashi couldn't really do during his time as a shinobi after he became a Jonin, because he had to go on missions all the time. And sure, missions are gonna make you get more powerful as well, but you need some training time in order to develop these new jutsus and become stronger overall. Missions are gonna give you the experience, and that's very important, but you have to train on your own, right? You're not going to start using a jutsu you're trying to master in the middle of a real battle in a real mission. And yeah, you may even say that Kakashi would have a lot of paperwork and stuff to do as Hokage, but he had a lot of people helping him out. Shizune was his assistant, maybe even more than that. And because Kakashi was a prodigy, and he had also mastered over 1,000 jutsus during his ninja career that he copied with a Sharingan, he could just develop them. And no, Kakashi would not lose the ability to use the jutsus he had copied, because you don't have to have the Sharingan activated to use a copied jutsu. If you look at the jutsu and if you manage to copy it, you just have that jutsu in your arsenal. Sasuke does not have to activate his Sharingan to copy Rock Lee's movements, for example. And yeah, that's not an actual ninjutsu ability, but it's a copied ability, which Sasuke did not have to activate the Sharingan for. And the second aspect as to how Kakashi could have actually become stronger without the Sharingan was his mental side. Kakashi was a stunted prodigy. He could have become much stronger if trauma hadn't impaired his development. First with his father's death, then with Obito's death, then with Rin's death. He could never truly get rid of all that trauma up until the very end of the work, when Obito dies, saving Kakashi's life, but Kakashi, knowing he managed to bring Obito back from darkness. Or well, it was Naruto who did most of the work there, but you know, it was good. But Kakashi had closure, his traumas were dealt with. Sure, he's always going to carry the pain of losing all of them, but it's no longer imposing that mental nerf on himself. And yeah, Kakashi starts to lose that trauma with Team 7 back in Naruto Part 1, we can clearly see him locking in the second fight against Zabuza after he kills Haku, and that awakens some nasty memories in him because that's exactly how he killed Rin back in the day. But now, with Team 7, with people to protect, he wasn't going to let that hold him down. And of course, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura were starting to take that trauma away slowly. He then gets much stronger after the pain arc when he encounters his father in the afterlife, or should I say limbo, because that was a big source of his trauma, right? His dad taking his own life when he was very young. That's the reason why he became so stuck up with rules, and Obito had to be the guy to say, well, sure, not obeying rules makes you scum, but betraying your friends makes you worse than that. And when he finally has closure with his dad, he becomes a much stronger shinobi because, of course, a lot of that trauma starts to melt away. And we see that in the war arc, because Kakashi becomes a much stronger shinobi during the war than he used to be in Naruto Shippuden itself. And I'm not talking about DMS Kakashi, I'm just talking about regular Sharingan Kakashi in the war. And when Obito finally dies, a good man, Kakashi awakens his true potential, his true prowess with a DMS. And sure, that's because Obito came back, but that's very thematic as well. And after he loses the DMS, which obviously had to happen because it wouldn't make sense for Kakashi to keep that forever, both because that would make him too powerful, but thematically Obito had to move on and he would have to take his eyes with him into the Pure Lands. He no longer has the Sharingan in any of his eyes, but he has that new mentality. He no longer carries open wounds, which solidifies itself when Naruto manages to bring Sasuke back. Kakashi's old failure, his student that he let Orochimaru take away, was now brought back by his other student. So Kakashi is no longer nerfed by psychological damage, allowing him to become much more powerful. And yes, the psychological state of Naruto characters is very important to how strong they are. It's a very thematic thing throughout the entire series. If you say that's not the case, then you're just lying to yourself. So combining the fact that he was no longer mentally nerfed with the fact that he was a prodigy and could master several powerful jutsus and enhance the 1000 jutsus he had already learned, he could in theory become stronger than what he used to be with the Sharingan. But that's not because he lost the Sharingan. He could have become stronger as a Hokage despite losing the Sharingan. And if he still had the Sharingan, he would be even more powerful. If you want to see why Kakashi should not have been a Hokage in the Naruto series, click on this video right here. Also,
Oh my god. That's crazy. Wow. I'm not much of an anime nerd, Naruto nerd no more, so. But the video's cool, gang. Ain't gonna lie, bro. Ain't gonna sense of Kakashi. For sure. Just like how they have. W take, W take, W take. Yeah, same story. I'm bad. I'll try before this to deactivate it. The guy you get on the advanced Sharingan. That's why you have to cover it. Oh, facts. Because he sure couldn't deactivate his jump. It's true, it's true, it's true. Valid takes, man. But